family, and then yeah, whatever you want, whatever. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's your family history kind of thing. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that sounds good.
So I'm recording it not public to the oral history page on the website so that you can look at it and think about it.
Going on.
So it's recording now. So you want to start out with an introduction, Diane?
I just, okay, I could just briefly introduce Robin.
Okay.
I was just going to have her start with, okay, Robin, you've had an amazing life. You've done amazing things. And we're so excited to hear about it. And you have an amazing family. So I just would like you to start talking about your family, your life, and Wilf, and whatever you want to. So go ahead.
I think this is a bit too general. When you look at Amy Goodman interviewing someone, she tells you like all sorts of stuff about them, and then she clearly has questions to ask, specific questions. But okay,
Well, introduce yourself
okay,
as Amy Goodwin would.
yeah, okay. My name's Robin Lloyd, and I'm lucky to. I felt very privileged to come from a beautiful family that has a combination of things that is very rare in America: progressive politics and wealth together. Usually one arranges to give away all of one of those aspects, but somehow we have continued. It was a great great grandfather that was a 1/4 owner in the Chicago Tribune in Chicago in the 70s, and even after the Great Chicago Fire. In fact, the fire was what ignited the success of the Chicago Tribune. And so so you see, now here's where there's a problem of getting exact information correctly. But anyway, this ancestor, William Bross, was a successful entrepreneur, and when Chicago burned down, he got on a train and went to New York and said, "Please come to Chicago and help us rebuild." And people did, and he ended up hiring a man who married his only daughter. He only had one child, and William Bross did. So Henry Demarest Lloyd married Jessie Bross, and Henry Demarest Lloyd was really the first of the muckrakers, you could say. He wrote the definitive book on Standard Oil, named Wealth Against Commonwealth. I usually have one around here. And and he became involved with, because of his commitment to justice, he became involved with the Haymarket Anarchists. Now that was the event that happened in 1886 in Chicago, when the poor folks were calling for, well, poor folks, but very well organized socialists from different countries were demanding an 8-hour day. You know, they were working like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week back in that time. And they held a meeting. Some of the people left the meeting. A shot ran out, and some policeman got shot and the policeman shot back. Anyway, that became the historic Haymarket event of 1886. And I think it really was a major factor in my great-grandfather's life. He became aware of the role of the wealthy in Chicago and of the poor. And for the rest of his life, committed himself uh, to revealing through his writing, and he wrote a number of books, amazing books, um, about injustice in America. And he and Jesse had four children, all boys, and the oldest one was named William Ross, Lloyd, and so this oldest one, my grandfather, was kind of the scion, is that the word, SCION, of his parents, and went with my great grandfather to New Zealand to look at labor issues there. So he had a good education. He went to law school. Anyway, he ended up marrying Lola Maverick Lloyd. And so it's Lola Maverick Lloyd who is the first person in my family to become involved in WILF, because of course WILF didn't exist until Lola Maverick Lloyd and hundreds of other women went to try to stop World War One at The Hague, and that was a turning point in her life, and in her husband's life, my grandfather, because they got divorced as a result of that trip. He ran off with another woman. She became devoted to, although, you know, I've looked it up, and I'm pretty sure they were not really intimate partners, but she was very devoted to Rosika Schwimmer, and it was Rosika Schwimmer who proposed at the conference in The Hague that we shouldn't just end this conference by talking and issuing a piece of paper. We have to go to all the opposing armies, because this was 1915. The war had started in August of 1914. People were fighting just 100 miles away when they met in The Hague. And Rosika said, yes, we have to go to the two warring sides and demand that they negotiate with each other, or that they offer a nonviolent, you know, some kind of mediation structure that could help the two sides put down their arms. And of course, they did do that, but none of the countries were willing to take them up on it. So as we know, World War I continued and was devastating. And in terms of human history, one wonders whether we have outgrown that amazing death wish that is manifested in World War I and World War II. And here we are, armed to the gills with nuclear weapons, and multiple wars all over the place. So in brief then about my grandmother, between World War I and World War II, she worked again with Rosika and other people in WILF to try to declare war being illegal. You know that the pact that I'm trying to think of in 1928, Marshall Pact, that declared that war was illegal, and there were a number of other wonderful things that Wilf was involved in, trying to hold the wealthy responsible, the corporations responsible for the weapons that were made in World War I. I think that's a big conference that happened in 1932. But anyway, as she saw war approaching in the 30s, her only the only way out that she could see was some form of world government. In other words, of nations giving up some of their sovereignty to an international order. The US had not joined the League of Nations, so she felt that that was falling apart. And so she formed something called Campaign for World Government with Rosica and with her daughter, Georgia, my Aunt Georgia, and my father. And so they did what they could, which was not enough, obviously. And in fact, Wilf did not accept their petition, what they proposed. I don't know exactly what was proposed, but at one of the Wilf conferences, her idea was rejected, so she left Wilf. And I documented that in the recent article in Peace and Freedom. And I also tried to bring back some of her ideas at the 100th anniversary of Wilf that took place in 2015, proposing that Wilf should at least support the idea of a parliament of the nations. It would be like the House of Representatives for the United Nations, as it is this Security Council, or I mean not the Security Council, that's just of the 16 countries and the people who have no power. The General Assembly. It would be the General Assembly is like our Senate. It's made up of appointments who from different countries. But the House of Representatives that were for imagining would be more like our House of Representatives. I don't know that I'm coherent here, but anyway.
Yes, you are. It's a more representative rather than just one person per country.
Well, there would be that, but the person would be elected and from different countries, and as our representatives are elected, and so hopefully maybe it could be shared in terms of population of different countries having different representatives, having different numbers of representatives. So, I mean, I'm perhaps mixing up her ideas and my ideas now, but anyway, it was disappointing that in 2015 this was rejected by our most recent Congress. So so as a result of that and the work I've done with Wilf at the United Nations, I can see that we have an important role there and status, because we were one of the first NGOs to be accepted by ECOSOC. ECOSOC, is that the name of it? The accrediting organization within the United Nations, but we're, as I say, we're sort of bound at the hip with the UN and not willing to look with a critical eye and be more critical of the United Nations. So that's all I'm going to say about my family. And so, do you have any other questions? And I have to take time to drink my cup of coffee besides.
Well, I have a question for you, and that is, how did you personally get involved with WILF?
There was a WILF branch, a WILF branch up here in Burlington, where I've lived since 1970. And I was only really a fellow traveler or just, not an initiator in anything for quite a while until Marilyn Clement proposed the peace train to Beijing. And that was for me, the great opening door to enter into WILF. I mean, think about it, being on a train with 200 women for 3 weeks and going to the largest women's conference in the world that had ever taken place till that time, 1995, was a totally thrilling experience. And and so from then on, I was hooked, and I was hooked by Marilyn Clement, who I think was our most effective and exciting president of WILF for many years. And unfortunately, like I was Googling her name today, there's hardly even a proper WikiLeaks entry for her. And if there is, it only talks about her job with the Center for Constitutional Rights, which was very important, and she was there for like a decade, and other important jobs she's had before and since she was at WILF. But there's no comment about or record of her experiences at WILF. And here I may be going off the deep end, but I think she was relieved of her duties as president, and she stayed on as maybe development person or something because of she was too enthusiastic about things, and I guess got WILF into deep waters in some way. And I was her sidekick. She and I did wonderful projects together, not only Peace Train to Beijing, but some of the other videos that are on my website and other videos that aren't on my website, but which just in talking about, and the thought of talking about my involvement in WILF, I've uncovered a few, and I'm going to have them documented. No, I'm going to have them, Ellen, tell me the word. I'm going to have them transferred into digitized. There
we go.
Digitized. And I think that will be interesting because it turns out, of course, they're in all sorts of different formats, and some of them are right here. I mean, this is amazing. Raging Grannies, 6 to 10, and it's interviews with Kay Camp, Miriam Snyder, Minnie Jaffe. Now, when did the two of you first become involved with WILF?
I started in 2004 and became co-chair of the Disarm Committee in 2008.
Oh, okay. So you lived through the terrible times.
Well, I came just at the end of the terrible times.
Mhm. I was trying to document with the terrible times once. I thought it was 2011 when there was the vote to get rid of Laura Roscos.
Yeah, I wasn't involved in that. I was interested in getting rid of nuclear weapons, and that was my focus.
Well, it's almost as hard to get rid of Laura Roscos, it seems. Uh, but the fact, that was kind of a crazy time, and to my mind hasn't been documented as to, well, why. Well, I mean, we all know why. There was a terrific struggle, power struggle between Laura Roscos and Linda Bell, who was the head of JAPA, Jane Addams Peace Association. And that was incredibly debilitating to our organization. And it resulted in this recall of Laura Roscos. And I think we lost significant membership and committed people who thought, what organization is this that is so petty and vituperative and mean to each other? So, as I say, I feel that time has never been really. I got some papers about it from my files. But of course, one doesn't want to just talk about the negative times
Mhm.
because there were wonderful times too, and going to different international congresses like the one I went to in 2004 in Sweden, and documented the wonderful cultural aspects of that conference. And then I've been to, other ones and been involved in going to the United Nations for the Commission on the Status of Women. That's been a very learning experience to be involved in all these things. And in fact, the whole WILF experience has been, and it not only meeting wonderful women from my state, from my country, and from the world, but meeting them and learning so much from them and plotting with them to make a more just world. So it's been a largely a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Diane, do you have any questions?
I think that was a great summary. I thought it was really good, except you didn't talk about going to different countries and your filming and things like that. Um, and this whole different, so I would like a little bit of that, even though that's not Wilf per se.
Also your work with Gary Davis.
Okay, but that was not Will.
No, but this is an oral history. That doesn't mean it's a Wilf oral history. It means it's your history. So,
Oh, well, that changes things a good bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Do you want to think about it and then we could do
We
it
could have a
another
second.
time?
Yeah.
We could do a
yeah.
second time. And this would be other things besides Wolf, all these other efforts and, different things. I think, we're emphasizing Wolf, and I think we've done that today, but we didn't talk any about your career pursuits or, different goals. And we talked about it in Wolf and the goal of the UN. I love that. I think that's such a great one, and I think it's worth pursuing more. But yeah, right, Ellen? Don't you agree we should have other stuff and
Well, we can have yeah, we can have a second conversation and then just put it together. But
right.
in the meantime, this is very interesting. And while we're talking about Wilf, of course, you were on the board of directors for a while, and you you were a co-chair of the Disarm and Wars Committee for a number of years.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that's true. We did.
what other things have you done? And also, when you get to the end of that, talk about what you're doing right now to with the Lloyd. Um,
The Lloyd family legacy.
yeah,
Oh, okay. What to say about that?
yeah.
Well, let's talk about you. I didn't know that you were on the board of Wilf, and then you could mention Disarm being how long you were chair, and then just mention that you about that you started this. You don't have to say much about the legacy, but just something would be nice to mention
What you would like it to achieve.
to achieve. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and maybe now are you two on the board now?
No,
I'm leaving.
All right, you're leaving, and Ellen?
I left last year.
Uh-huh. But
I didn't want to be personnel chair. It was not a fit.
Right,
uh-huh.
it wasn't a I agree with that. It wasn't a fit, but you did good, but what you didn't love it. You should let whatever we do now, we need to love and want to do.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think though now with you, Ellen, and Cheryl working together on Disarm, that that's a pretty good fit.
And Diane.
And okay, the three of you
Oh.
are the chairs. That's right. And they're very well organized. Um, but you know, I so are we stopped taping now since we're just
No,
strategizing?
would you like me to do that? I will stop it.
Why don't we just talk about your wealth and then another meeting we can talk about your other activities. So just you were on the board for just say I was on the board or your
Well, you see,
experience.
that's the thing. I don't remember exactly when I came on and when I got off. And that's partly because I was working so closely with Marilyn Clement and getting involved I would get involved whatever she wanted me to do, and then she would get involved with what I wanted her to do. And the board of Wilf at that time was not entirely happy with her. I think one of the reasons was for something that I think was the most interesting and challenging project that Wilf US got involved in, which was the tour of women from both sides of the drug war. Because getting Wilf to acknowledge that marijuana should be made legal or decriminalized was a big fight. And Phyllis from Maryland, who was president, had a relative who had been injured by the war on drugs and was very outspoken about that. But I finally wore them down, and Wilf has issued a sort of powerful statement supporting decriminalization and ending up with the idea that that all people have the right to seek consciousness, to seek an alternative to. Let's see. You see now, this doesn't make sense unless I have the document in front of me and I can tell you the details. But in any case, after that struggle, we which, and I, this whole thing, and Ellen, you know about this, but the fact that anyone who smokes grass is considered not just a criminal, but a felon if you're caught with this has been, I think, one of the most debilitating things to our nation, really, because it put especially people of color, young men, as the target. And we know now that Nixon um, really relished that and made severe penalties in order to capture people of color. So that's why I went to Columbia twice, and one of them was with Marilyn Clement, and it was a WILF delegation, and actually Janet, no, the international president came with us. Janet Ballantyne, not Janet Ballantyne.
Ellen Slaughter?
Huh?
Oh, the international president?
Yeah, she was on the delegation also, and and it was this delegation was co-sponsored by another group in the U.S. and I think the Courageous Women of Columbia uh, video that I made is really quite strong, and it got some coverage because the other group was a group that was led by a Colombian American woman who was also leading the delegation with Marilyn and was a crusader on this issue. And so that was the delegation to Colombia. But then, as coming out of that, and we're talking about 1996 or 7, we sponsored, and this must have been at the beginning of Marilyn Clement's start as executive director of WILF. And there again, I'm not sure of the beginning and end, because could you all research this for me, since you're board members? Maybe you have access to more papers. That we sponsored this tour of a coca farmer from Colombia, and a coca farmer from another Latin American country. And then on the demand side was a friend of mine living here in Vermont, a woman of color, who was getting off being addicted, and her husband had been addicted and had AIDS, and then ultimately she had AIDS, and she has had 4 children, and oh my goodness, a difficult life. But she was such a spunky, outspoken person, and I remember driving down to the United Nations with her, and we had this amazing it's right on the photo of we put on a display that had a picture of the cartel guys handing over the goods to the dealers in America. It really portrayed the situation. But the delegation, the tour of this group was very controversial within WILF, and was debunked by a number of people, including maybe people on the board, and it did not get the awareness was not as as widespread as it should have been. But I mean, you can just remember at that very fraught time in the end of the 90s, in the middle of the war on drugs, that we had two women. Well, it was like more than two women, but I think mainly of these two women, the one from Colombia, who was a small coca farmer, and in fact, she was head of the Coca Peasants Association. Uh, Olivia Morales, and my friend up here, who was, had been an addicted uh, drug drug person and ultimately died of it. That they were appearing on the same platform and talking about how both sides, how people on both sides were manipulated and impoverished by this militarism that was kind of a carryover from um, the
The arms race.
the what?
The arms race.
Well, the arms race, but Indians fighting.
Oh, yeah. Right.
The colonialization?
Well, yeah, that sort of getting people opposed to each other, uh, so that other larger nefarious things can happen underneath them. In other words, criminalizing both ends of the war on drugs
Mhm.
was to my mind needed to be revealed. The fact that we were paying for the ecological devastation of the fields of Colombia by giving them this glyphosate to spray on the coca fields.
Mhm.
I mean, coca is a sacred plant in Colombia. And to this day, it's amazing to me that any government would allow that to happen to, as I say, to a plant that is seen as sacred by the indigenous people. And
And the same with marijuana.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the stupid war really continues, even though there is an effort now to uh, get the United Nations to move, I believe, marijuana from being the most horrible drug in the category with all the others, to move it to a bit less uh, dangerous. And so many countries now are moving away from demonizing those drugs and trying to deal with the after effects of people who become who take too much. And
What other causes have you been involved with in WILF?
in WILF, well, we
You certainly have been involved with the nuclear weapons abolition.
oh yeah, yeah, of course.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, for me, that was initiated by going to Hiroshima in 1986. So that was the 40th anniversary of the dropping of the bomb. And I think anyone who goes there, and I know Ellen, you've gone there, what, several times? Or
Yes.
anybody,
Yeah.
what you see is that the the full track of taking the uranium out of the earth and processing it and turning it into weapons, and then weaponizing it and putting it in different places. That whole process is so destructive to those taking part in it, and leads a trail of cancer amongst uh, the indigenous people of the West in our country and in other countries. And You know, I think it's so fascinating. I read the whole story of the uranium from uh, the uranium for the Hiroshima bomb. That came from the Congo, and it was the Belgian Congo at that time. And the story of how that uranium ore got transplanted to the shore and put on a boat and brought to the United States and refined here, and all that before, that was in like I think 1942 or something, several years before the bomb was dropped. But that whole saga was sort of mind blowing in the way, well, frankly, men think about planning to be destructive. In other words, some people in Belgium were thinking ahead to bring that ore, uranium ore, out of Shinekanabe, is the name of the place in the Katanga part of the Congo, where all the other minerals are just conglomerated together. It's the richest part of the planet, and so uranium was brought from there. And after that, I think mainly U.S. found American sources here for uranium. But anyway, being there in in Japan and witnessing the people and hearing the stories, as I say, of people at all phases of the of the making of nuclear weapons was such an incredible education to me. And I came back committed to working on getting rid of nuclear weapons, and that was as I say, in '86. But what happened was that something that was more proximate to me and was creating a deadly violence epidemics closer at hand was Central America. So I, from '86 on, much of my energy was involved in going to Central America, making films there. In 1993, the year of indigenous people, I went to Guatemala. What a fantastic country! But it was a walk. The film was called Journey Home, and with Witness for Peace, we left southern Mexico with people who were returning to their homes after, this was so-called after the devastation of the years of Rios Montt and the U.S. funded destruction of the indigenous people of Guatemala who had dared to vote for a democratic leader in way back in 1954. What was his name? Anyway, we arranged to have him killed. And since then, Guatemala has been in the hands of the elite and the powerful. But there was a peace. So there was Rios Montt. There was the destruction of the indigenous communities in the early 90s, and then there was a so-called peace settlement, and so many people wanted to return to their homes. And so I was on the train with some of the people returning, along with Witness for Peace, and that was again an amazing experience, because as the train pulled through different towns, huge crowds of people came, with knowing that there were people that were returning who had fled, and that this was a sign that the peace treaty was really being implemented. So we went to the center Guatemala, City, and then I had to return for some reason, but another person took on the camera and followed the people to their homes where they had lived before, and so it was a quite a moving experience. Witness for Peace people who were leaving their homes to accompany people who were returning to their homes. So the importance of having a stable home for people was kind of highlighted through that film. And
When did you start making films about various issues?
okay, well, way back before coming to Vermont, I had some friends who were in the film business, sort of alternative films. And so that was in 68. And the funny film that I first first made, and it's up on my website, called Hauling Trap. And I was just so taken with the fishing boats that left from Sakonnet, Rhode Island, and went out and they fished with nets, big nets, and they would get in little dinghies from their big boat and with these nets, and they would pull up the nets, and you'd look down, and what are they bringing up? Are they going to bring up monsters or bluefish or exactly what? And so it was like the mystery question, but also the beauty question, because fish shimmer, their skin shimmers as they are arrested, or arrested isn't the word, as they are captured, as they are brought in the net. So it was a sort of a beauty thing, and the fact that the fishermen this was their living, they had to do it anyway. That was my first film.
And what did you do with that film?
Well, basically nothing. I don't think it was shown much of anywhere.
Do you have your films online anywhere?
I mean, please, ladies, they've been online, and I've sent you emails galore.
Okay, but you don't have to be mad at me about it. I'm asking for the oral history. So
Okay, all right.
where can we find them?
Yes, Green Valley Media is my website for films, and there are different categories of films there. One is Bread and Puppet. I was a deep committed groupie of Bread and Puppet, and made some what I think will turn out to be important documents, because it didn't just show what a interesting lifestyle people who came and so on, and highlights, but it actually documented the pageants, which were the most profound theatrical events that Peter Schumann put on. So those are on the website, Bread and Puppet, and then Wilf, and then Latin America, and then experimental films, of which
So this is Green Valley Media, right?
yes, there we are. Good. And now, if you click on click on Green Valley, let's see. Oh, and then for heaven's sakes, Haiti was the first one, and working on Black Dawn, which became our most successful film in the whole website, which is an animated film of Haitian history. Believe it or not, spending time in Haiti in 100 degrees, driving around and talking to artists and sort of explaining how animation works, and that cutout animation, and they were so enthused and excited to take part in this, partly because animation is related to the word animism, and Buddhism is a strong part of Haitian culture. So they were delighted to take part, and it's the history of the Haitian Revolution shown in animation. So that did win prizes here and there, and then I made another film about there's Bread and Puppet. We made a book about Oscar Romero, who is to this day one of my biggest heroes. And yeah, those are other tapes, the pageants, and Passport to Freedom. That's a film about Gary Davis, and Voices from Chernobyl. Yeah, Gary Davis and the world passport that he created. And this one, Sol and Luna, is a friend that is made by Dragon Dance. And then more stuff by Dragon Dance. Sam Curson continues to this day to go to Mexico and make interesting theater down there. And so I just documented that a few times. So yeah, this is a good way to in Nicaragua, and a member of WILF is now in Nicaragua with a delegation. Her name is Jill Clark. She's descended from Sandinista royalty, member of the junta. Her uncle was Descoto, who then became head of the General Assembly at the United Nations for a period of time. Those guys were all, deeply committed liberation theology people. And of course, they were badmouthed by the US government. Another occasion where our government tried to kill off the dream of humanity. And Nicaragua. I have to stay with Nicaragua for a while because Vermont had a sister city with Nicaragua, still does have, and that is in Puerto Cabezas, also called Bilwi. It's on the Atlantic coast, which is now called the Caribbean coast. And we went there and made a film about Puerto Cabezas, our sister city, but also Doreen Kraft and I and Jay Craven, who's a filmmaker from Vermont, went to Nicaragua at the beginning of their revolution, which was in 1980, and they were implementing a alphabetization campaign. So we went into rural areas and showed how people who, grown-up people who had never been given the privilege of or the right to learn to read and write were in classes, and all the great stuff that the Sandinistas were doing. So I think being in Nicaragua, knowing that Jill is going there right now with a delegation of interesting people, and she's going to the Atlantic coast, which is fraught with dissension with the mainstream government now, which is still supposedly Sandinista, with Daniel Ortega, who is, has become something of a dictator. and there was an effort to overthrow him. And one could talk about the politics of that, but maybe not right now. Uh, but he is still in charge, but more Nicaraguans have tin roofs on their houses than in any other state in Central America, because there still is the Sandinista commitment, liberation theology commitment to the poor that is expressed in the government there. And so Jill is, I'm really anticipating her return, because even our sister city was fraught with dissension as to, do we support the people who are trying to overthrow Daniel Ortega, or are we going to stick with the Sandinista um, powers that be that have gotten that, where there is corruption. And she will be dealing with all of that, and has a representative on, a person on her delegation, an African American woman who's very deeply involved in Black Lives Matter at the origin and so on, as part of her delegation. And she will be coming back and living here in Vermont part-time from Philadelphia. So that connection is continuing for me and for us here.
Locally, you've got a problem, which is the F-35.
Yes, we do.
This is in Burlington, Vermont. Can you tell us something about that campaign?
Oh my goodness, it was brought here by our revered Senator Pat Leahy, who recently retired and everyone loves. But he made it happen, and Bernie went along with it. And the F-35 is stationed here at our Burlington airport, which on two sides is surrounded by low-income people who have to endure the sound of this plane taking off. And when I say this plane, I'm talking about 20, or maybe it's 24 planes that zoom out and have to go through their training sessions and then come back in. And we have been unable to extract them from polluting our environment over the years. Our mayor supports them. It happens that this airport, it's called an international airport, is outside the limits of Burlington itself, but it is owned and controlled and has a board controlled by our mayor. We're going into an election in March. That mayor is resigning, and there are two women running. We're going to have a woman mayor in Burlington, but that's not to say that there will be much change if the Democratic woman wins. So anyway, that has been a long and obdurant struggle, and makes you aware of how encased our government is at all the different levels in militarism. And now the war on Gaza, of course, reveals that also. And that is becoming an issue on every level of election coming up, is what is your position on the ceasefire? I see it's getting kind of dark here.
I was just going to say it's dark. I can't read. It's changed.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we need more light or something. I was just going to say something about that. Oh my gosh, that's a
well,
lot of light. Ah,
that's
5:10 p.m. on the East Coast in Vermont. It gets dark early.
yeah. So sorry, I should have put that on in terms of improving the quality of the video, but Yeah, so we're having an election, and I think everyone is around the country. And I think the issue of ceasefire will be brought up in more places than the authorities want it to be brought up. And I think it's more, I think it's a vibrant issue, everywhere. And I think that there may be an overturning of some verities that there's there's no hope for the left wing of the Democratic Party, but I have been reading this book. I recommend it to everyone. It's by Ryan Grimm. And at the end of it, I shouldn't reveal the outcome, but he thinks that AOC should be, may end up being president of the United States eventually, that she has the support from a widespread range of people. She was the most popular Democrat in New Hampshire in the last election, I think. I mean, she wasn't on the ballot, but one of those, polls discovered that she was the most actually popular Democrat in the Democratic Party. And of course, this documents how the squad was pursued and persecuted by the official Democrats for much of the I don't like the fact that the picture behind me goes right through my eyes. I don't know how to change that right there. If I sit up better. Okay, well, anyway, we're near the end, right? Or we were near the end quite a while ago.
No, I think, Ellen, I think we're pretty good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's
I
great.
think I'm very pleased. I think it was wonderful.
Well, you see, it wasn't what I thought it would be, because I wanted to have more actual facts at my fingertips.
Well,
Do you
you
want,
can watch this, and if you want to film any part of it, I've got the original on my computer, so if you want
and
to
we can
redo
add
any,
to it.
yeah, we can add
Yeah.
to it, we can revise it, because I have it.
And we can put images. I mean, I can take this to my guy who does videos for me, and we can merge we can merge this track with shots from the films. I mean, you started showing some of them, but just from the website, we could get something more.
Okay, if you want to do it that way, that would be fine. If you want to send me photographs and tell me where to put them, that would be all right too. But if you've got somebody else that does that for you, then whatever you want to do.
Well, that would relieve you of this, because you have to go on and interview a few more people, right?
Yeah, and have all sorts of other things going on too.
Yes, yes.
I'm gonna stop the recording now. And